On.
Hi, Kate. This is Ms. Valverde, and we're just going to go over Unit 3 slides, right? So, in this unit, we're going to start talking about the different parts of the cells, okay, which includes the membranes and things moving into and out of the cells. All right. So, you should have already gone through organelles in middle school, but we're just going to kind of recap what are some of the important components of the cell. Right. So when we talk about a prokaryote cell, we're talking about a very simple cell. They're very small, um, and these are like bacteria or archaea. All right. When we look inside of them, we're going to see mostly the cytoplasm, which is like this gel liquid. It's mostly water fluid. There's going to be some ribosomes. Those are those little gray circles in here. There could be some plasmid, some DNA. Plasmid, which is like a little circular DNA. There could be chromosomes. All right. So this is a little bit more DNA. All right. That's not inside of any kind of special compartment at all. These are just floating around inside the cell. Right. We could also have like some, this could be like a piece of starch that's inside there that the bacteria ate. Um, then the bacterium will also have a cell wall. This is the cell wall layer, and it can have a capsule that's kind of just protecting it from dehydrating. It could have a flagellum, which allows it to move. This is like a tail, it's a whip like tail. And it could also have cilia, which are these little spiky, well, it calls it pili here or cilia. Those are going to help the cell to move around. All right. So basically, a bacteria or prokaryote cell is going to have DNA, it's going to have a cell membrane, it will have a cell wall, it's going to have ribosomes, and it's going to have cytoplasm. All right. The other things like the flagellum, not all bacterium have that. Right? Then we have the way more complex eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells have membrane bound organelles, which means that they have particular parts, like these mitochondria in here, that have membranes around them. In fact, the mitochondria have two membranes around them. Right? We have to also keep our DNA nice and neatly inside of a nucleus. Now, you in the eukaryotic means that it's the true cell, just like Europe is the true land. Eukaryotic is the true cell. So this is the cell of most of the things that we see on a daily basis. So us as humans, we are eukaryotic organisms. This is the type of cell you'd see inside of us. Plants also are eukaryotes. They wouldn't have an animal cell though. They'd have a little bit different structure to them. There's a couple of differences. And then fungi would also have a eukaryotic cell, and protists would also be eukaryotic. Right. Some other features we'll see here involve protein production. So in bacteria, in the prokaryotes, all they had were ribosomes, which essentially take DNA and make a gene, make a protein out of it. But in the eukaryotes, we have the DNA where we keep it here in the nucleus, right? The production of protein starts with that information in the nucleus. It then goes to the ribosomes that are on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. You see these little bumps, that's why it's the rough ER, right? And then those are going to make a protein, and then it'll send the protein over to the Golgi complex over here, which is essentially what's going to package and then move that protein around somewhere in a vesicle. And that vesicle could maybe bring the protein to the cell membrane or maybe send it out of the cell. Okay, so they'll move it around. Okay, some of the other organelles we see here are centrioles. The centrioles have a major role to play in cell division. We still have cytoplasm. We still have a cell membrane going around this cell. Right? We could have a flagellum. Right? Not necessarily. Most the cells inside our body do not have a flagellum. Right? We could have microtubules. All right, so this is part of the structure to the cell. We also have what's not labeled here is a cytoskeleton. It's kind of like railroad tracks that you don't see inside the cell that move things around. So let's say this ribosome needs to get over to the rough ER here. It could move along the cytoskeleton to get there. It also, the cytoskeleton gives it some structure. Okay. Another thing we see here is the lysosome. The lysosomes are going to help to digest waste, break it down, and those are our main ones. Okay. Oh, smooth endoplasmic reticulum are making lipids or fats. So when the cell membrane needs to expand out, or let's say we need more membrane around our nucleus, it's the same kind of membrane, then this smooth endoplasmic reticulum is going to make more of those phospholipids and then put them into the cell membrane to expand it out. Okay, so here's our plant cell looking a little bit different than our animal cell. We still have a nucleus, we still have our rough endoplasmic reticulum, so the production of proteins is the same, the Golgi complex there. Then we also see chloroplasts, right? So chloroplasts are what are taking light energy and turning it into chemical energy. We still see mitochondria like in the plant and the animal cells, but then we have something that usually takes up most of the cell space inside of plant cells, the central vacuole. Right now, you can have a vacuole inside of an animal cell, but they're way smaller. A vacuole inside of a plant cell is holding a ton of water because plants are very concerned about dehydration, and it also uses that water to make sure that the plant is standing upright. All right. Another thing that we see on our plant cell is this cell wall that gives it a very strong structure. And we already talked about how that's made out of cellulose, right, which is a type of starch. Um, let's see, anything else over here that we haven't talked about that are some main ones? These are the main components of our plant cell. Right. Oh, the membrane also for the plant cell. You see this yellow line here. The cell membrane for the plant cell is right against the cell wall. All right, so it still has a cell wall. I'm sorry, cell membrane. So both animals, plants, and prokaryotes, they all have a cell membrane, and that's going to be the innermost lining. Cell membrane is really in charge of controlling what goes into and out of the cell. All right, so here's a chart that kind of compares what's going on with prokaryotes, plants, and animals. It doesn't talk about our protists, doesn't talk about our fungi, so not everybody's on here, but it's kind of a rundown list. All right, I'm just going to try to move something out of your way so you can see this. I'll share the slides with you so you can see all the parts of this. Right. Oops, sorry. Okay, so the plasma membrane, we've already talked about how it's a phospholipid bilayer. It's controlling what's going into and out of the cell, right? And we'll talk about some of the things that can move through the membrane, right? And it also allows for the cell to interact with other cells, right? Another main feature that all the cells have, other than the membrane, is cytoplasm. So it's mostly water, and it also has enzymes in it, sugars, amino acids, essentially like all the chemicals that the cell is constantly using that are being moved around, right? If we were to talk about the cytoplasm, which is all of that gel within the cell, it's made out of cytosol. So these are pretty synonymous. This is just what cytoplasm is made out of. Okay. So main organelle of eukaryote, the main distinguishing feature that all eukaryotes have, they all have a nucleus. So no prokaryotes have it. All eukaryotes have a nucleus. Right. Nucleus is composed of the nuclear envelope, all right, which is a membrane. It has chromatin or DNA inside of it, right, and then it has a nucleolus. Right. The nuclear envelope is in charge of making sure that only certain things get into the nucleus and out of the nucleus. It does have nuclear pores, and that allows mRNA out of the nucleus. It's part of making a protein. So that messenger that says this is the DNA gene, we need to turn this into a protein, that can leave the nucleus. All right. It does work with the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and it's made out of phospholipid bilayer. All right. The DNA that's inside of the nucleus, we call it chromatin because it's DNA wrapped around these proteins called histones. Now, essentially, what that is it's a way to organize the DNA and make sure it's like nice and compact. If you were to think like about a whole bunch of Christmas lights or wires that you have out, if you just had them all just hanging out inside of the nucleus, they'd get really tangled, they might get broken. So our cells very, very wisely wrap up our DNA. They spiral it around these proteins so that they don't get damaged at all. Right. So here's our nucleolus inside of our nucleus. This is the nuclear envelope, and all these little holes here are the nuclear pores. right? Inside the nucleolus is where our ribosomes are produced. And ribosomes are pretty much like a protein and RNA complex. So they're made out of both protein and a nucleic acid. Right?